Welcome everybody to PinstripeChronicles podcast. I'm Tats. I'm here with Donald and Rob, and the rumor mills for Olsen are intensifying a bit. There are some Twitter accounts that are stating that the deal is just about done. Jack Curry came out and debunked it, saying pretty much that yes, they were in talks, but nothing's been close to being finalized. They don't even know how many players are going to be involved. The one number I did hear is that there were 5 players that were going over for Olsen. And depending on who those players are, is 5 players for one player a steep ask? Is that giving up too much for one guy?
Depends on the player, I guess. I mean, Matt Olsen is really, really good. I would almost put him in the elite category for his position. I mean, you probably could, considering what he does with the bat and the glove. I mean, the names that were in this potential deal were Peraza, Voit, Garcia, Wells, and an outfielder. So, I mean, depending on who that player was, if it's a guy like Pereira, then I think that might be too much. But if it's one of the, lower tier outfielders in our system, then it doesn't seem like too much, considering we have to get rid of one of those shortstops. Voit is a must go at this point. If you're getting a first baseman, there's no need for Voit. Davey Garcia, we've already established, has basically been lost in the shuffle in this organization. Austin Wells, that's a name that I've kind of been on the fence about. I would trade him for the right player. Olsen is that guy. You don't know what Wells is going to be. Catchers are so hard to project, and the Yankees have so many catchers in their system. Donnie Sands was just added to the 40-man. They still have Siegler and Josh Bro, so they have other names there. So, I mean, technically it's not a lot, but at the same time, it could be, because when you look at these names, I would like to think there's another player involved coming back to us. Maybe a guy like Chris Bassett, who's on the last year of his contract, but that's just my thinking. If that was if that was true, again, you can take that report with a grain of salt because it is just a Twitter account. But this day and age, are we really not expect people to have sources? I mean, it's so easy to make connections nowadays via social media. It's not that hard to believe that this guy could have a source. Maybe he is right. Maybe he knows something that other people don't. I don't want to sound like I'm talking so bad about the guy. I don't know him personally, but he has gotten stuff right before. So, I mean, at this point, it's just take it with a grain of salt, and hopefully he's right, because I want Matt Olsen on this team.
Well, yeah, okay, so let's just work on the hypothesis, okay? We can't verify this. Basically, what we can really do is trust the beat writers and the guys that are involved and I'd say Jack Curry is probably not even probably 100% more reliable source, and he's a very good guy and he knows his stuff. So just quickly, Jack Curry did say the Yankees have made inquiries with Matt Olsen with the A's, but I'm hearing that there hasn't been any detailed conversations about which players would be involved in a potential deal. Obviously, that can change with one call or one text. Yankees are definitely interested. Okay, so that's what we're going to go by. However, if we work on the hypothesis of that trade, Rob, you've studied our minor league prospects. What would you say about Wells' upside terms of the defense, because obviously we're looking for an upgraded defense, a catcher. Now, he's obviously not ready right now, but he could be ready in, say, a year or two. How does he project defensively?
Well, there have been some reports that actually compare him a lot to Gary Sanchez, to where he's more of an offensive catcher. And a lot of people feel like he's more of a fit at first base at the major league level, which could be why, even though he's so highly ranked on our farm system, that he's a tradable piece, because the Yankees might not see him as a catcher at the major league level. If you're going to replace Gary Sanchez with a left-handed Gary Sanchez, it's not really, it's kind of just a lateral move. They both have good bats, but they don't really have a lot defensively. I would say Wells is probably better at this stage than what Sanchez was, because all through his coming up, we heard Sanchez, not very good behind the plate. All the scouting reports told you that, and he's still having those same issues, where Wells, I almost said Olsen, where Wells is slightly above that. in a way, but he also still has some of those deficiencies. We saw some of the minor league reporters saying that earlier this year, that he's not the best defensively, but he's also not the worst. So he probably could be a catcher at the major league level, but the Yankees probably feel like if they don't feel like he's going to be a catcher at the major league level, now's the time to trade him while his stock is rising because he's playing in winter ball and he's playing pretty well. So
He's raking.
a lot of eyes are on
Yeah.
him.
Well, the other thing is, I think that, a name that nobody was really talking about was, with Donnie Sands, is he kind of climbed up the ladder without the spotlight and put together a really good year last year and showed a lot of growth. So that might have made a more highly ranked prospect like Wells that much more available for a trade to get a big time player. So that could also be taken into account. And when you talk about, we're getting Olsen and it's going to cost us 5 players, that also doesn't mean that there aren't any prospects coming back over that are on their level, in their system. So you might have a AA guy that could be coming over that's just not being named because nobody knows who it is yet. And so that's also something sometimes you'll see the big marquee names staying in the headlines, but you don't know who's also attached to it that's in their lower systems.
Wells makes sense because I know that Oakland, have had scouts watching him. So I think it's a safe assumption that he would be involved in talks. It's just whether the Yankees make him available or not. I think that Devi Garcia makes a lot of sense. It may be that he needs to change his scenery in order to fix just the minor things that's wrong with him right now. His delivery. He's not the tallest guy. He's quite a small guy. He's got a really nice curveball, but I think the rest of his stuff probably needs a little bit of an uptick. Maybe another system, maybe another organization. Oakland are very, very good at developing guys. You can see them working him because he's got the poise and he's got some nice stuff. It's just control with him, and I'm not sure about his upside right now. It's a shame because I loved what I saw from him when he first came in. So I think he'd make sense. I think his stock's kind of fallen down a little bit, so it would make sense to maybe move on from him now. So I could see both of those guys. Luke Voigt absolutely has to go, and then you just add a couple of top 15 prospects, and I think you can get Matt Olsen. I really do.
Yeah. Do you think that the catching prospect that's going to be attached, Wells is the one being mentioned, but you don't know if that could change. Do you think that's going to be a deciding factor if Oakland does say yes to a deal?
Probably. I mean, maybe. I still think they want that headliner prospect, and that would be Peraza here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But to get 2 guys that are in our top 10, Peraza and Wells, I mean, that's pretty big. I mean, Garcia fell out of the top 10, but he's still a very young pitcher with upside. I mean, you're getting some really good prospects in that deal, and that's basically what prospects are. Is what guys that could be, really good players at the major league level. So I would say those 3 and Voigt were probably enough. And if you're adding a 5th player, I mean, it does seem like kind of a steep ask for one guy. But again, you got to think about who you're getting. You're getting 2 years of arbitration. We don't know how arbitration is going to go post CBA, but you're getting 2 years at least guaranteed of a really good first baseman in his prime. And so, I mean, again, the prices are going to be steep. It's going to be a steep price to get a player of that caliber because Oakland doesn't necessarily have to trade him. But they're kind of going through this weird, for some reason, some weird transition because they're probably moving soon. Who knows? But if there's ever a time to get him, it's now. The Yankees farm system is loaded, in my opinion. They have a lot of guys they can easily replace with the players they'd be trading here. I mean, I would definitely do it. If that's the proposed trade, let's say it is true, because this is basically all just hypothetical here. I think you have to say yes to that. If that's the offer that the Yankees are putting on the table, or let's say if that's what Oakland's asking, the Yankees have to say yes to get Olsen.
Yeah, is because the name that Wells being thrown out, he was talked of as such a untouchable. Yet it's amazing how for the right player how that mentality just switches off. Where you're like, oh, okay, if that's what it takes, then let's do it. And it's not a insult towards Wells' ability. It's actually a compliment. It's you're thought of that highly. Throughout baseball, we want to make sure that you're in a position where you're actually going to be able to continue to grow. And Oakland is one of those teams that they do very well with building up prospects and getting them into the major leagues and playing well. So that could be a good home for Wells to continue to develop into a major league ready catches sooner rather than later.
Well, there's still plenty of time for him. We just drafted him, I think 2 years. We drafted him twice, I think, actually. So he's still got a lot of room to develop. It's not like he's coming up tomorrow or anything. He's not going to be ready next year. So these are the kind of players you trade, the ones that are getting that high praise at a low level, because you don't know how they're going to play when they move up to AA and AAA. Yeah. They could have a hiccup and have to get moved down. This is the time where you trade a player like Austin Wells, where his value is up. People have eyes on him from what he did in the minor leagues and now in winter ball. This is the time to pull the trigger on a trade like that. I like Wells a lot. I've said in the past that I wouldn't trade him, but this year I just feel like this is the year you kind of have to go all in, because the window is closing to win a championship with this team. I mean, you have a lot of guys that you have to pay. They have so many prospects they can move to get good players. This free agent class is loaded. This is the time to make those kind of moves, and you can worry about the farm system later on. I just feel like you have to maybe have one or two untouchables, and everybody else has to be on the table.
We talked about Voit. That's kind of with Olsen. If the deal with Olsen comes through, that he's kind of lost his position. So he would be a guy that's thrown into a deal. Do you think that Torres could also fall into that, where he's used in a trade? Being that if we get a shortstop, or when we get a shortstop, we have to get one. And we have LeMahieu at second base. We'll have, let's for argument's sake, Olsen at first and Gio at third. So Torres kind of becomes the odd man out as well, like Voit. So I'd be curious to see. Evan at one point brought up the name with Hendricks from the Cubs. Do they send him back to the Cubs and try to get a deal made for Hendricks?
It makes a lot of sense to move on from Gleyber Torres. He wouldn't be involved in any Oakland talks because, as I say, they're trying to shed salary, and Torres will probably be due a decent pay rise in terms of arbitration. So I don't think that will be a possibility. But there's a bunch of other teams out there that could do with a Gleyber Torres. The Cubs are rebuilding now. I would assume that they're in the rebuilding phase. So maybe Gleyber Torres would make sense for them. It depends on what we can get back for him. I'm not, obviously his stock took a massive fall, but because the Yankees put him in at shortstop, which has affected his career. Putting him in at second base in September definitely improved him. He was a much better player. Having said that,
but the
power's still exactly. The power's still not there, and he wasn't the best second baseman. He was just average or just slightly below average, as opposed to absolutely abysmal at short. So I'm not quite sure what stock. That's the only thing. I think we can get a starting pitcher in return. I do think that. I think that would make a lot of sense. What would you guys think?
I think that actually makes a lot of sense because, Torres is still, I think he's got a good 3-4 years of team control left. He's still 24, 25. The Cubs could see that and be like, all right, for 2 years of Kyle Hendricks, who's owed about I think maybe 13, 14 million, which is actually a really good price for a player of his caliber. That might be right up their alley. And if the Yankees are to get a shortstop, and if it's what we can talk about those names all day, but if they paid premium money for a shortstop, DJ LeMahieu almost has to be your second baseman.
Yeah.
I would be fine with him at third, not at first. I'd be fine with LeMahieu at third, but DJ is better at second base. So that would leave Torres kind of out of the loop. You're not going to bench LeMahieu. You're paying him too much money to put him on the bench. So you kind of would have to move Torres and hope that the Cubs see some upside and say Torres and maybe a couple of other guys, and you can get Hendricks and maybe even a guy like Ian Happ back, who's a versatile bench piece, better than what Tyler Wade would offer you. So you can maybe try to pull the trigger on a move like that, which is something that we've talked about all along, is the Yankees have so many options available to them, but we're just waiting for that first piece, that first domino to fall, because until they make a move, whether it's a shortstop or first baseman, nothing's happening. So they have to decide what they're going to do here. But I would trade Torres for a really good starting pitcher, and I think Hendricks falls in that category. Otherwise, I'd hold on to him because I think he still has a lot of value. But again, there's an infield logjam here. If you're acquiring Olsen and you're signing a shortstop, Urshela does have value, but then again, you're taking LeMahieu away from a position that he's really good at, which is second base. So,
and this is why you're very right in bringing up DJ LeMahieu. He's actually one of the underrated parts of this whole discussion. So let's look at it here. He's a Gold Glove second baseman, but he's actually a very solid first baseman, but he's not ready to play first base full time. I don't like him as a full time first baseman, not at the moment. If the Yankees plan on him seeing out his full contract in pinstripes, the only thing that makes sense is for him to be the second baseman. Otherwise, like for instance, if they sign Rizzo, okay, say they have Rizzo for a 2-3 year contract, right? 2, maybe an option third, something like that. Okay. If they had that, and then after his contract, then you move DJ to first base, that would make sense. Okay, because you know, as DJ's getting older, you know, you'd want to put him in a less athletic position. And then and I think he'd be a fine first baseman in say 2-3 years just to see out the last part of his deal. That would make sense. But if they acquire someone like Olsen, who's going to be around for as long as the Yankees re-sign him for, so you could be talking for 5-6 years, whatever, then it doesn't really make other you can't really move DJ. Obviously, DJ can't be moved to first base, so then you can only consider third and second. I'm not sure. It's just getting older. Third base is maybe a big ask for him. So second base is the only thing that really makes sense. So it looks like Torres is the odd man out here.
Well, the other
unless the Yankees, unless the Yankees are really planning on developing Torres as the second baseman in the future, that leaves DJ as the odd man out. They'd have to move on from Gio Urshela this year in order to put DJ at third base. I'm not sure how long term that would be, but that's DJ LeMahieu is the underrated aspect of this conversation. So it's a good point by Rob.
Well, another way to look at it, or another player to look at with Torres, is with Pittsburgh. If you have Torres, you throw in Medina, and to sweeten the pot, you throw in Sweeney for Reynolds. You know, this way that saves you money in the outfield that you can give to Judge. You know, so you still have Florial in the system. You know, Frazier's still somewhere in limbo. So there are a lot of different ways, you know, like Rob's been saying for a couple of days, there's so many options you can go with. There really are no wrong answers right now.
Pittsburgh is a tough one because their owners refuse to add money to their payroll. All they want to do is shed. So Torres, I think, is going to have a significant pay rise in terms of arbitration. So
that's what I'm saying. If you dangle somebody,
I'm not,
you know, like a Sweeney or a Medina, you might get them to bite the apple a little bit.
Not for Reynolds. They're going to ask a lot more.
It's going to be well, yeah. But you know, that's just a starting point.
I mean, you're looking at Volpe, Torres, Medina, plus because they have no reason to trade Reynolds. The guy has like 4 years of control left. He's a premier player. They don't have to trade him. That's one of the first reports that said they're getting interest, but they have no reason to trade him unless they're absolutely blown away. So Reynolds seems like a pipe dream at this point, if we're being quite honest. I mean, I would absolutely be thrilled to get him, and I would trade Anthony Volpe to get that guy, but I just don't think it's going to happen. They have no reason to trade him unless Pittsburgh just they've fallen off a cliff and their ownership just like, screw it, let's do whatever we want. Let's play video game baseball. And they're just, doing the video game rebuild where you trade everybody. Then then maybe we can get him. But I really don't think he's getting moved unless someone gives them like 3 top 10 prospects and a major league ready guy, which I don't know who's giving that up for one player.
Yeah. So it looks like the Hendricks idea is more realistic. Because we can use, you could always, so you can never have enough starting pitching. And the way to do that is you could add, you're trimming down some of your, a full farm system for a pitcher that's going to cost less than if you were to sign Verlander. So you can take Verlander off the table. Instead of paying him 20, you could pay Hendricks 13. You're getting a guy that's younger, just as and really a formidable starting pitcher that can put in rotation. So that could work for all the parties involved.
Yeah, Hendricks is coming off kind of a tough year at a high ERA, so maybe it wouldn't take that much to land him. Torres might have more value than Hendricks at this point because of the control and all that. So it could be, I don't want to say it'd be a 1-for-1, but it wouldn't take that much, in my opinion, to land Hendricks if the Cubs are trying to shed that salary and go through a rebuilding phase. I just think the Yankees would actually have to get more for a player like Torres. It might be like a 2-for-2, maybe a 3-for-2 kind of trade. But that's why I think if you include Ian Happ in that, I'd be willing to get rid of Torres in that move. Because Happ's a interesting player. He's a switch hitter. He's got good qualities, but he's also not really looked at very highly right now. Yeah. So, I mean, you could definitely use him because the Yankees get injured like every 2 days. So he'd be a guy that plays a lot. And I'd rather have him over Aaron Hicks or Tyler Wade be
I love that you mentioned Aaron Hicks because I'm just reading the New York Post article where Boone said yesterday that Hicks sent him a video of himself swinging in the cage, and Hicks says he feels great.
Okay,
well, that's a relief. So apparently he's in position to play winter ball.
And I hope he does. It's as much as we trash on Hicks and how he's made of glass. When he's right and he's healthy, he's a very good defensive center fielder. So that's something that really need. It's hard to just throw that. That
when's he been healthy though?
Away.
When's he been healthy though?
Well, that's the thing. What? Yeah. Well, that's why we keep
2 healthy years with us. 2020 barely counts, and 2018 he was fantastic. But every other year, it's like, man, the numbers would be a lot better if he had just played. But that's the thing; he's not playing. He's hurt every single year, and his defense is declining. He didn't have the issue last year. His defense is declining. So he's more likely to be a corner outfielder at this point. If you go into next year with him as your starter, then you're looking at a lot of outfield alignments happening throughout the year where Judge is going to play center. You're going to see a lot of Stanton. You're going to see Gallo maybe in center field. I don't think they can roll with Hicks as the starter and be like, we're good, because he could, after game 1, just drop. It's just, that's how he's been. He gets hurt every year.
Or if he gets out of bed in the wrong way and he just doesn't feel up to it, he'll just call in sick for a little while. And his real passion is golf. I really don't know why he's not following his heart. That's where he needs to be going, man. He spent the last couple of years playing golf anyway. He might as well just make it a full-time job. Save us money. It's honestly, he can't play center field next year. He just cannot do it. it would just be terrible for us. We made a huge mistake last year where we didn't put anyone behind him. So as soon as he got hurt, which was quicker than anyone would have expected, even for his standards, we had nobody, and then we had to overuse Brett Gardner. We can't be in that position again. We just cannot do it. It cost us numerous games because we didn't have anybody in the outfield that was prepared because Clint Frazier was struggling, and then he got hurt and then disappeared. And then we didn't have Giancarlo Stanton ready until later in the year, which didn't make any sense. So the way the Yankees, then they were relying on like Tim LaCastro and then Allen, and then the best one was Florio, but they didn't even trust him long enough. So it was just the Brett Gardner show. We can't go on with that next year. We have to be planning things better. We have to be smarter. And at least I'm heartened by the fact that Brian Cashman has said that he's looking at center field. That's a good thing. It's only a good thing because he's never said that before. He's never said that before. And we know how much he loves Aaron Hicks. If there's any excuse for him to keep Aaron Hicks as the starting center fielder, he will look to do it. But, the only reason why Aaron Hicks is so beloved in the Yankee organization is because the analytics guys love him. But his metrics are declining faster than you'd ever imagine. You know what I mean? It's like defensively, way down. His power numbers are down. He's striking out way too much, and he's not walking enough to make up for it. So I don't see why they love him so much. Move on from him. I love Marte.
What I think you're starting to see is Cashman is kind of – he's always been very patient with players. Torres, Frazier, Hicks, Sanchez. This offseason, you're kind of seeing an about-face from Cashman. And I think that deserves conversation tomorrow on, is Cashman finally saying enough's enough? I gave you all the chances that you guys needed. It's time to move on from you. And that would be a really fun breakdown. So, we'll bring that conversation back in tomorrow. And just remember also, turn on your notifications because on Saturday we will be doing a special with the Talking Rivals podcast that is set to be a lot of fun. Who's also part of the Sportinarian.com family and SportsWire.
Yeah.
So remember,
good show.
Yep.
Good people.
So,
good friends.
We are going to end this here. Just remember, like, share, comment, and subscribe. Check out our social media in the description. Wear your pinstripes with pride and play hard.
Thanks for watching.